I'm Mario Lopez, and welcome to Stories in the Air, the radio drama series that features fairy tales, legends, and music for listeners of all ages. Almost all of the stories presented on our series were originally passed down through the oral tradition. There were few books, and most people couldn't read or write. One person will tell another and another until eventually, at some point along the journey, the folktale was collected and written down on paper. Charles Perrault, a French poet who lived during the 1600s, collected stories such as Cinderella, Puss in Boots, and Little Red Riding Hood, and is often called the father of fairy tales. Have you heard of the Brothers Grimm? Like Perrault, Jacob and Willem Grimm collected more than 200 tales from storytellers among ordinary people and published them between the years of 1812 and 1815. We traveled to the deep south for the African-American folktale, Riley and the Hairy Man. This tale has been around for some time, and a similar version of this story was collected by the Federal Writers Project back during the time of the Great Depression in the 1930s, a time when millions of Americans were out of work and out of money. From 1935 to 1939, unemployed writers were given work by the federal government. Their job was to collect folk tales and write down the stories of ordinary Americans as they dealt with the hardships of life during their time. Kind of like what Perrault and the Brothers Grimm did in the 17th and 19th centuries. The folklore and life stories collected by these writers are among our great American treasures. They contain a part of our rich storytelling heritage, which is part history, part entertainment, and part fantasy. You may know our guest reader Blair Underwood from his role as an attorney on the television show LA Law. Now, lawyers are people who have to have their wits about them. They win their battles with words rather than with fists. This is exactly what a little boy named Riley has to do when he is confronted by the Hairy Man, a scary conjurer from the deep, swampy woods of Alabama. A conjurer is someone who can create magic. Fortunately, Riley and his mama have a few conjuring tricks of their own. So sit back and let your imagination fly as Blair Underwood conjures up the tale of Riley and the Hairy Man.
Riley lived with his mama in the woods near a river in Alabama. Riley's daddy had disappeared when Riley was just a little old thing, and folks all said that Riley's daddy had been snatched up by the Hairy Man. When Riley started getting big, all the folks said the Hairy Man was going to get him too. In fact, his mama worried for him and said, "Riley, the Hairy Man got your pappy, and he'll get you too if you don't look out." "Don't worry, Mama," Riley said. "I take my hound dogs everywhere I go, just like you told me." See, Riley's mama was a conjure woman, and she knew what scared the Hairy Man. Too bad for Riley's daddy, he didn't listen to her. But Riley was smart, and he knew to listen to his mama and do whatever she told him. One day, Riley took his axe and went down to the swamp to cut some poles for a hen roost. His hounds went with him, as they always did. But on this day, a little old pig show ran by, and all the dogs took off after it, leaving Riley all alone in the swamp. "Well," he said, "I hope the Hairy Man ain't nowhere around here now." Now, he picked up his axe to start cutting poles, but he looked up, and there came the Hairy Man through the trees, grinning. Oh, he sure was ugly. He had hair all over every inch of his body. His eyes burned like fire, and spit drooled all over his big green teeth.
Riley was a poor boy, scared by one big hairy man. I said Riley was a poor boy, scared by that big hairy man. If he don't watch out, he'll be eaten up like bread and jam. He's got his hound dog, his mama too. If you don't watch out, she'll cast a spell on you. She says, "Ain't no hairy man gonna get my poor young boy. Cause fooling evil people is our greatest joy. Riley wasn't sure how to scare that big man Blue. Yes, I said Riley sure don't know how to scare that hairy man Blue. But he do know this, his mama showed him what to do. Sure enough, Riley, you listen to your mama. That's right. You can scare that old hairy man Blue.
The hairy man, he kept coming and coming closer and closer. Riley saw the hairy man didn't have feet like a man, but like a cow. So Riley threw down his axe and climbed up a big bay tree. See, Riley had never seen a cow climb a tree, so he figured he might be safe. "What for you done climb up there?" the hairy man asked Riley from the bottom of the tree. But Riley kept climbing, nearly to the top before he looked down. Then, after he looked down, he climbed plumb to the top of the tree. "How come you climbing that tree?" the hairy man asked. "My mama told me to stay away from you. What you got in that big croaker sack?" Riley asked. "I ain't got nothing yet," the hairy man said. "Go on away from here," Riley said, wishing the tree would grow another mile or so. "Ha!" said the hairy man, and picked up Riley's axe. He swung it stout, and the chips, they flew. But Riley remembered a trick his mama had taught him. He grabbed the tree close, rubbed his belly on it, and hollered, "Fly, chips! Fly back in your same old place!" And lo and behold, the chips flew back into place. And the hairy man spit and swung the axe again. See, Riley knew he'd have to holler fast. They went to it tooth and toenail then. Riley hollering and the hairy man chopping. Riley hollered till his throat hurt, and he saw the hairy man was gaining on him. "I'll come part way down," Riley said, "if you make this bay tree twice as big around." Everyone knew the hairy man had some magical conjure powers. But the hairy man said, "I ain't studying you." "I bet you can't," said Riley. "But I ain't gonna try," said the hairy man, and swung the axe. Then they went to it again, Riley hollering and the hairy man chopping. Riley had about yelled himself out when he heard his good old hound dogs yelping way off. "Here, dog! Here!" he hollered. "Fly, Chips! Fly back in your same old place." "Now, you ain't got no dogs. I sent that little shote to draw them off." "Here, dog!" hollered Riley, and they both heard the hound dogs yelping and coming jam up. The hairy man looked worried. "Come on down," he said, "and I'll teach you how to conjure." "I can learn how to conjure I once from my mama," Riley retorted. The hairy man spit and stomped his big cow feet, but he threw down the axe and balled the jack off through the swamp.